In this lesson, we will learn how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide fractions. Let's begin with adding and subtracting. The steps here are as follows. First, create equivalent fractions with the same denominator. Then add or subtract the numerators and keep the denominator the same. So, for example, to add 1/3 and 1/6, we need to first rewrite the fractions so that they have a common denominator. To do this, we should determine the smallest number that 3 and 6 will divide into. In this case, the smallest number is 6. So we will rewrite the fractions so that they both have a denominator of 6. So let's take 1/3 here and multiply top and bottom by 2 to get the equivalent fraction 2/6. The other fraction, 1/6, already has a denominator of 6, so it can be left as is and brought down here. Now that both fractions have the same denominator, we can add the numerators to get 3, and we will keep the denominator of 6. At this point, we can simplify the fraction 3/6 by dividing top and bottom by 3 to get 1/2. So 1/3 plus 1/6 is equal to 1/2. Okay, let's try another one. To subtract these two fractions, we must first rewrite them so that they have a common denominator. So what is the smallest number that 4 and 10 will both divide into? In this case, the smallest number is 20. So we will rewrite the fractions so that they both have a denominator of 20. To do this, we'll take 3/4 and multiply top and bottom by 5 to get the equivalent fraction 15/20. Then we'll take 7/10 and multiply top and bottom by 2 to get its equivalent fraction 14/20. Now that both fractions have the same denominator, we can subtract the numerators. So 15 minus 14 equals 1, so this is the numerator, and we will keep the denominator of 20 the same. So 3/4 minus 7/10 is equal to 1/20. Okay, now let's look at multiplying fractions. The rule here is very straightforward. Multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. So to find the product here, we multiply the numerators 2 and 5 to get 10, and we multiply the denominators 3 and 7 to get 21. What about this example? How do we handle mixed numbers? Well, the rule here is to first convert any mixed numbers to entire fractions before multiplying. So first, we will rewrite 3 and 1/2 as 7/2, and then we will rewrite 1 3/4 as 7/4. At this point, we can multiply the numerators, 7 and 7, to get 49, and we can multiply the denominators, 2 and 4, to get 8. So 3 and 1/2 times 1 3/4 is equal to 49/8. If we wish, we can convert 49/8 into the mixed number 6 and 1/8. To find this next product, notice that we can first rewrite 7 as the fraction 7/1. And then when we multiply the numerators, we get 35, and when we multiply the denominators, we get 6. So 5/6 times 7 is equal to 35/6, and if we want, we can convert this to the mixed number 5 and 5/6. Finally, to multiply these three fractions, the rules remain the same. When we multiply all three numerators, we get 21, and when we multiply all three denominators, we get 100. So the product here is 21/100. Alright, now consider another product. If we multiply the numerators here and the denominators, we end up with some very large numbers. However, before we perform any multiplication, we should first see if we can simplify the fractions. For example, we can simplify 23/46 by dividing top and bottom by 23 to get the equivalent fraction 1/2. We can also simplify 33/44 by dividing top and bottom by 11 to get 3/4. Now that we have simplified both fractions, it's much easier to find the product. First, we multiply the numerators 1 and 3 to get 3, and then we multiply the denominators 2 and 4 to get 8. So our product is 3/8. Okay, what about this one? Here, both of our fractions are already written in lowest terms, so we cannot simplify them any further. However, before we multiply these two fractions, we can make our work a lot easier if we cross-simplify the fractions first. Here's how cross-simplifying works. First, examine the numerator of one fraction and the denominator of the other fraction and determine whether we can divide both values by some number. In this case, we can divide both numbers by 5. When we do this, the original 10 and 25 simplify to be 2 and 5. At this point, we examine the other numerator and denominator and determine whether we can divide both of these values by some number. In this case, we can divide 9 and 27 by 9. When we do this, the 9 and 27 simplify to be 1 and 3. Now that we have completed our cross simplification, we can multiply the numerators to get 2, and we can multiply the denominators to get 15. Alright, now let's move on to dividing fractions. Here the rule for dividing fractions is to multiply by the reciprocal of the divisor. Now don't forget, the reciprocal of a fraction is the flipped over version of that fraction. So if we want to divide 1/4 by 2/3, we must first recognize that 2/3 is the divisor. It is the number we are dividing into 1/4. At this point, we can apply our rule to see that 1/4 divided by 2/3 is equal to 1/4 times the reciprocal 3/2. From here, we simply multiply. When we multiply the numerators, we get 3, and when we multiply the denominators, we get 8. So 1/4 divided by 2/3 is equal to 3/8. Okay, let's try another one. Here the divisor is 1 and 5/6. To find the reciprocal of this, we must first rewrite it as the entire fraction 11/6. At this point, we'll take our divisor and find the reciprocal of it and multiply it by 7/12. Now before we multiply, we should first cross simplify. So we can take the 12 and 6 here and divide them both by 6 to get 2 and 1. Now since we can't simplify 7 and 11, we'll leave them as they are. Now that we have finished cross simplifying, we can multiply the numerators to get 7, and we can multiply the denominators to get 22. Okay, let's try one last question. To simplify this awful-looking fraction, we should recognize that the fraction here can be thought of as division. In this case, it is the same as 10/33 divided by 25/11. To perform this division, we multiply 10/33 by the reciprocal of 25/11, which is 11/25. Now before we multiply, we should cross simplify. We can take the 10 and 25 here and divide them both by 5 to get 2 and 5. And next we can take 11 and 33 and divide both of them by 11 to get 3 and 1. At this point, we multiply the numerators to get 2, and we multiply the denominators to get 15. So our awful fraction here simplifies to be 2/15. Alright, let's summarize. In this lesson, we learned how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide fractions.